Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and it is time for our Week 8 NHL Power Rankings. We're now through the first 2 weeks of December. The NHL season has continued along, and we're 2 months into the NHL season, maybe a little bit more than that. But today we're going to go over our 32 team NHL rankings. Guys, every weekend we will have these rankings out for you. Expect them on Saturday. Sometimes, like this week, it will be on Sunday. But every weekend, we have a power rankings out for you guys. So stay tuned for that every week. So with that said, let's get into this week's rankings. Now, at number 32, kind of a similar story here up in Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens are at the bottom of our rankings this week. It's been another rough week in Montreal. The other night, they played the St. Louis Blues. They're currently on that Midwest road trip. And they have just not really gotten things going. And it's been pretty much the same story every week for the Habs. There was maybe about a week or two where there was some optimism, but it's quickly rolled off the wrong way for the Habs. They're 2-7-1 in their past 10. They currently hold the second longest losing streak in the NHL, and at 6 games. So things are just not going right in Montreal, and they're not really playing that well either. You could say, oh, well, there's optimism. They're playing kind of well. This is one of those losing streaks they kind of deserve, and unfortunately they just aren't there. Jake Allen going back to St. Louis the other night did not look good. It's rough. It's rough for the Canadiens fans, and remember, there's 50 plus games left this season. This is going to be torture up in Montreal. Again, there's a lot of stuff going on with the management and stuff like that, so there is slight optimism, at least to distract you a little bit from the on-ice product. But I totally understand the frustration in Montreal right now. Speaking of frustration, at number 31, they almost got evicted from their building before Christmas. The Arizona Coyotes, they have currently won 3 of their past 10 games. It's so frustrating watching these games in Arizona. You're hearing more cheering when the away team scores, and we just saw that the other night against the Philadelphia Flyers. It's not like the Vegas Golden Knights, the San Jose Sharks, or like a team on the West Coast. This is an East Coast team that is, you could, quite clearly hear the cheering from the away team fans. And that's the kind of thing that just, you're like, man, what is going on? And there's a lot of things not going right in Arizona. And tickets are extremely cheap. It's got to be tough right now for the Coyotes fans out there. I totally understand. Kind of similar to the Canadiens. You're just like, man. And the good thing is, at least they don't have that crazy long losing streak that they had in the beginning of the year, and a team like Montreal, but they just have consistently been bad. And unfortunately, that's not anything we didn't expect this year, but it's still rough to watch the Coyotes. Now, number 30 here is the Ottawa Senators, slightly more optimistic. Now, the Ottawa Senators, again, very Jekyll and Hyde this week. Earlier this week, they played the Islanders at home, and they lost the game, and the Islanders broke their 11-game losing streak. Kind of a mockery there of the Senators. Yet they come back this weekend at home, and they end the 5-game winning streak of the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's not easy to do, and they handed to them pretty good. That is not something we typically see up in Ottawa, and it's good that it was on home ice. I think it gives a little bit of optimism and hope in Ottawa. They've seen all these draft picks, they've seen all these new management changes and stuff like that. But when are they going to see the on-the-ice product change? And we might start to see that with games like the Tampa Bay Lightning. As these guys get older, they mature. Again, we're going to talk about it with New Jersey in a minute. But the Ottawa Senators are just going through the growing pains, and that's where they're at right now. It doesn't make it any less, difficult to watch, but at least there is some growth throughout the year. And I think that's really what DJ Smith and Pierre Dorian are hoping from their Senators organization. Now, at number 29, on a kind of, just like that, you get a coaching change, and the Philadelphia Flyers, snapping their 10-game losing streak, have now won 2 straight under their new interim head coach, Mike Yeo. Chuck Fletcher may have made a good, spark in the night pick here with Yeo. They look very good on this West Coast road trip. Maybe good timing to get rid of your former bench boss and his assistants. But it sounds like the the Flyers are kind of picking up some steam here. And if they continue this on the West Coast, winning hockey games, they're going to have some confidence when they get back to the broad street. And I think there is some confidence in Philly right now. You're seeing some great goal scoring, some great goaltending, which we've seen all the time. Now the key is, can they key on their defense, being defensively sound while still putting up goals? And that is going to be the real test for the Flyers. And, the 10-game losing streak has kind of put them out dead in the water. Yet you go on it's not realistic, but let's say they win 13 of the next 20 games. The Flyers could find themselves right back in the conversation of maybe making the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, so at number 28, definitely going in the wrong direction here. It's the Buffalo Sabres, guys. It's been a rough couple weeks for the Sabres, and the two most recent games, or this past week, they've been really frustrating. You lose to the Rangers in a game. There was the offsides call. They tied the game in the final minute. It probably should have been a goal, but I'll let you guys decipher that for yourself. At the end of the day, they lost the game, but they had a chance to pick up at the very least a point in that game. They played Washington this weekend. They played pretty well in that game. Again, they come up short in the shootout. There is definitely, they left points on the table. You could argue easily they left 3 points on the table over the last couple of days against really good Metropolitan Division teams. The Capitals and the Rangers are top 5 in my power rankings. They're no joke, neither of those teams. And the Sabres took it to them. And I think there is a little bit of respect that has to be given to the Sabres despite their 7-game losing streak, the longest right now in the NHL. Their record looks awful, 1-7-2 in the past 2 weeks. I know things are rough in Buffalo. I get it. But there's definitely room, again, for optimism. Despite, again, talk about a team we expected the Sabres to be bad this year. But they're keeping themselves in close games. They had that good start. And I think there is something to at least look at and say there is something there. Now, let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen playing in the NHL right now? I think that's a mistake by the coaching and management. I don't think he should be in the NHL. Why are you exposing him to what's probably going to be another awful season in Buffalo, and kind of shell-shocking and potentially, stunting the development of a really good goaltending prospect? That's my opinion on that, but we'll kind of see how things play out. And he got schooled in the shootout. I hate to say it. He had some nice saves, but that Oshie one, it definitely shows his lack of experience. And maybe that's how they're looking at it. Let him gain his experience so when the games are important, he will be ready to go. I guess that's another way to look at it, but I have my own thoughts on that. So, with that said, at number 27 is the Seattle Kraken. And the Kraken, again, talk about frustrating. They're very similar to Buffalo in the sense, right now they're on a 3-game losing streak, but they show games like the other night against Columbus where there's like, okay, maybe we could have gotten more, What could have been? They go down 4-0 in this game, or 4-1. I think they went down 4-1 in this game, and they came back, and they tied the game down 3 goals. By the end of the third period, they lost in overtime, a weird fluky goal, but they got back in that game. They looked dead in the water halfway through that third period, yet they come back, score 2 goals, and they made it a hockey game, and they were able to pick up a point. Again, they weren't able to pick up 2, but you look at their past 2 weeks, 5-3-2, but that 3-game losing streak definitely hurts a little bit. So, recency bias, I don't like the Kraken, but overall, there are games there they could have maybe won. And I think there is, again, when you're one of these bottom teams, it's hard to look at moral victories as, that's what's going to help us out through the year, but you almost have to do that, and I think the Kraken are a good example of that. Okay, so at number 26, we got the New Jersey Devils. We're heading back to the East Coast. And, the Devils have not been good. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. From where they were to start the year, they got Devils fans pretty excited about what they could do. And things have just gone off the rails in New Jersey. Now, the good thing is, they have some really good forwards on this team. Specifically, Andreas Janssen has actually looked very good for the Devils. Dawson Mercer, Yegor Sharangovich, obviously Jack Hughes scoring the other night. the Devils have, faced some adversity in a game. I mean, perfect example the other night. I mean, they ended up losing to the Islanders, giving them their first win at UBS. But the Devils, they score a goal. I think it was 4 minutes left, the first period. They score a goal. And the Islanders respond. They get a goal, right, within a minute. And then 50 seconds later, the Devils regain the lead. And that was a Jack Hughes goal, showing a little bit of moxie, confidence from the New Jersey Devils and not getting so down. Oh, we took the lead on, then they took it from us, and letting the Islanders swing the momentum. That takes a lot of maturity from a young Devils team. It was really nice to see. They did end up losing that game, but again, you got to kind of hang your hat on something in this sort of situation, and that's what the Devils are kind of having to do with themselves right now. Speaking of trying to look for or grasp any good news, the Islanders 2-5-3 in their past 10. They finally got their first win at UBS Arena. It only took 8 games, but the Islanders finally have a W at their new home, which is pretty much Fort Never Lose or Fort Never Win right now for the Islanders. But they finally got one, right? Got to start with one. With that said, though, the Islanders have been in close games, very similar to Buffalo and Seattle. They've given themselves a chance to win some games, yet they come up short, and they end up going on this big losing streak. And I gotta say, the Islanders season may be sunk right now. But the only way you could get back into things is picking up 2 points consistently, and more often than you don't pick up 2 points. That's the key for the Islanders the rest of the way if they want any chance of making the playoffs. And as of right now, at their current point percentage, they're pretty much projected to be as good as they were in the 2008-2009 season, which they got John Tavares with the first overall pick. Let's hope it doesn't stay that way. Now again, Shane Wright would look good in the Islanders colors, but this was the year the Islanders were supposed to be a deep playoff team. That wasn't necessarily the expectations of the Islanders. So just something to throw in there. At number 24 is the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are 4-5-1 in their past 10. And what's interesting about Columbus is, again, very similar to some of these other teams. Their record doesn't look great, but I think because of what we had for them perceptually in the beginning of the year, they're actually hanging in there pretty good. And I think what's interesting with Columbus is, are they potentially a buyer at the deadline as a team that, had they added another center here or there, they could be a good team. Now, they obviously blew the lead the other night against Seattle. They were able to come into form, win that game in overtime. Those are the kind of things you could look at if you're a Blue Jackets fan and say, all right, there's some optimism there. I think that's something that they could build off of. And they've kind of done this throughout the year with, Jakub Voracek, Jakub Voracek, whatever his name is, Oliver Bjorkstrand, some of those older veteran guys. They've been able to, use the momentum that they have and kind of, let that bleed through the locker room, even into the young guys. And I think the Blue Jackets, again, they might not be a playoff team, but I think they are just going to stay in there and fight, and they've done a lot better than I thought they would do at this point. So kudos there to the Blue Jackets. Definitely well-deserved. All right, so here we go. All right, here we go. So number 23, we're heading to Motown. We're heading to Hockey Town as we take a look at the Detroit Red Wings. And things have been pretty ugly in Detroit. They're on a 3-game losing skid. They are 5-4-1 in their past 10 games. Nothing really pretty there in Detroit, but obviously we know the rookies. It comes down to the rookies. Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, some of the new additions, guys like Nick Leddy who have come in. Who's another one? Alex Nedeljkovic. Seeing some of those guys come in and really help this Red Wings team. They were just on the outside of being a wild card team. Just last week, they were in the wild card. So, again, the losing streak kind of hurts them in that regard. But they've definitely kind of stuck around. And I think the Red Wings will be in that conversation come the end of the season. They aren't looking to trade anybody out. They like what they've got there. And I think this is potentially a good season and a dark horse season for the Detroit Red Wings. With that said, let's move on up. At number 22, heading back to the West Coast, is the Los Angeles Kings. And the Kings are on a 2-game winning streak. They just beat the Dallas Stars. They won again after that on Saturday. So again, a little bit to look at and say, yeah, you know what, we're doing pretty well. They beat the Minnesota Wild, who were on that that epic 8-game winning streak. They've been really good. The Dallas Stars, they were the second team to beat them. I think they were 7-1 going into that game. They beat them. So a little bit of optimism in LA. Is this when they finally go again on that 10-game winning streak before losing another 6 after that? A very streaky team in LA this year. Very hard to read through the first quarter of this season. But you have to look at LA and say, again, kind of like Detroit, could they maybe sneak into a wild card spot in the Western Conference? That's definitely on the table. But again, it seems like every passing day, they're doing really bad, they'll miss the playoffs. They're doing really well, they could win the Stanley Cup. It's very bipolar right now with the Kings, and that's something we'll definitely watch over the next couple of weeks, especially with some of their guys. Obviously Edler being out long term now, possibly with a lower body injury, a tough hit against Duhaime. That's the kind of stuff that hurts when you're the Kings, especially with Walker out the rest of the year. Drew Doughty was out for a while. The attrition of that blue line, they almost have to bring in somebody. It's just a matter of when the LA Kings decide they're going to do that. All right, so at 21, we're heading to the Windy City. Yeah, the Blackhawks are at 21. Would you believe that? They have knocked themselves out of the bottom 10 in our power rankings. Incredible stuff from the Blackhawks. They kept themselves in the game the other night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were down, 4? Again, very similar to the Kraken. They were down 4-1 in that game in Toronto. They come all the way back. A weird bounce, a weird carom off the boards. Kind of a rookie mistake there by Kevin Lankinen. They end up losing the hockey game. A tough loss there for the Blackhawks. But again, if a couple puck bounces go your way, maybe that puck bounces the other way, and they end up getting a breakaway, and they end up winning the game in regulation. It's just one of those things. But Chicago has looked very good through the month of November, even into December. Definitely some optimism in the Windy City. Now, the question is, how long will it last? That is still going to be on the table, especially with new management. Are these guys playing better because they know they have new ideas, new eyes watching them? That is something to keep an eye on, but they definitely look motivated out there. I'll give them that. Now, number 20, a team that maybe looks a little bit stunted right now is the Winnipeg Jets. They are not where they were in the beginning of this season. They were playing some great hockey. Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, who else was there? Nikolai Ehlers wasn't getting the goals, but he was playing well. So that is kind of tailed off, and it's gotten to the point where Winnipeg is just kind of falling down week by week because other teams are just playing better than them. They've been playing mediocre hockey, below 500 over the last couple of weeks, and that's kind of where they're at. And just like that, Chicago and Winnipeg are right next to each other. Again, a couple weeks ago, you would have said that's crazy. Welcome to the NHL. Speaking of welcome to the NHL, welcome back to the NHL, head coach Bruce Boudreau. The Vancouver Canucks are at number 19 in our power rankings. They moved up a bunch. This was one of the teams that had a huge bounce up this week. They're 5-5 in their past 10. They had that good East Coast road trip. They had a really bad, homestand there at the end of Travis Green and Jim Benning's careers in Vancouver. But now they've won 3 straight with their new head coach, Bruce Boudreau. The Vancouver Canucks look like they're on a mission, and they're out here. They're winning hockey games. They look very similar to the Minnesota Wild we saw a couple years back when Bruce Boudreau came in on an interim basis. He's got that different voice. He's got that different mentality, that vibe. And I think it's rubbing off the right way on the Canucks. They needed a little bit of order, a little bit of stability from a different voice. I think it's working and paying huge dividends for the Vancouver Canucks. All right, so at number 18, staying on the West Coast in the Pacific Division is the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks have been weird. They win a couple games, then they lose a couple, then they win a couple. It's kind of hard to get a read on where San Jose is at right now. But they won the other night. They've had some pretty good games here and there. But San Jose, I'm definitely keeping more of an eye on them because I want to see what they are. What are they? And I think, again, we always talk about that Pacific Division being pretty wide open other than Vegas, and that's even, they are still up in the air from where they're at. This is going to be interesting how things play out in the Pacific, because you have Vegas. You have Vegas, Calgary, Edmonton, Anaheim, right? That's 4 teams right there. Then you have San Jose and LA, who are kind of on the outside looking in, and then obviously Seattle. So definitely keeping an eye on that division. A lot can happen, a lot can change, because I don't think anybody's really established themselves dominating the top of the division, and I think it will create some interesting, debates and a lot of questioning and fighting it out at the end of the year. But I really like what we've seen so far from that division. A lot better than I thought they would be. Just not a lot of dominance up top. Speaking of not a lot of dominance up top, at the top of the Central Division, the Dallas Stars are 7-3 in their past 10 games after that 7-game winning streak. Yet, here they are on the West Coast on a 3-game losing streak. They lost the other night against Vegas. When they had that streak, they were up, I think, 2 or 3 goals, and it's kind of deflated the Stars. They lost that game in Vegas, then they lost to the LA Kings. Now they most recently lost to the San Jose Sharks, and you're scratching your head saying to yourself, what's going on? What's going on with the Dallas Stars? They're just dropping games, and just like that, here they are. And just like that, they now find themselves out of the top of the Super Sweet 16, and that is where the Stars are at. A lot of tough news there this week. Obviously, the whole thing with Ben Bishop. I'll be making a video about that. That is hard to watch. Him, unfortunately, having to hang up the skates. He is done. So, again, we're keeping an eye on Dallas. There's some optimism there. I mean, there's some really good things about Dallas as well. Their power play, 4th best in the NHL. They also have a pretty good penalty kill, top 10 in the league. But again, it comes down to consistency. And if you're going to win 7 games and then lose 3 after that, it's basically only a 4-game winning streak at that point. Again, it's still good, but they're just finding themselves back where they were before that winning streak. They got hot. It was, fire in a pan, and then lights out, and they're done. Definitely frustrating. Number 16, on a lot later of a note here, we're looking at the Anaheim Ducks. We all saw the reverse lacrosse move by Trevor Zegras to Sonny Milano earlier this week. But there is definitely some things in Anaheim to hang your hat on. Now, the problem is they played Pittsburgh the other night, and they lost that game 1-0. That hurts. Obviously, giving a shutout to Casey DeSmith. The Penguins' goaltending has been good. We'll get there. But again, it's just like, man, why can't we get there? And, I think the Ducks fans want to see better from how things have gone so far this year. They see hope that maybe they make the playoffs, but you got to win those close hockey games like the other night in Pittsburgh, and they just haven't been able to do that. And they kind of find themselves literally right in the middle of the pack, because I just don't really know where they stand. And that's like a lot of Pacific teams and Central Division teams in particular. For some reason, those two divisions are it's very murky with who's at the top and the bottom. You don't really have a lot of haves and have-nots like you do in the Eastern Conference. All right. So at number 15, the St. Louis Blues. More optimism here. The Blues have been very good. They're currently 6-2-2 in their past 10 games. That's 14 of a possible 20 points. In the past 2 weeks, they're on a 3-game winning streak. And again, they're getting goaltending from different guys, and I think that's very, exciting and a lot of optimism there. You're seeing some guys like, Dakota Joshua, I think is his name, scoring goals. You don't even need Tarasenko every night to score. I think there's definitely some good stuff going on in St. Louis. The goaltending's been pretty good as well, and they're just winning games, and that's all you could ask for. You're seeing some goal scoring from the back end. Torrey Krug getting on the board. So definitely something to hang your hat on as a Blues fan. And again, I think had they not had the whole COVID situation, I think they would actually be in a better spot than they are right now. So, that's definitely something we're going to keep tabs on. Again, another team, I want to move them into the top 10. I just want to see them just a little bit more consistent. And by the end of the year here, give it another 2 weeks, we might see the Blues in the top 10. Number 14, the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators are on their own winning streak. They're on a 4-game winning streak, and they've won 7 of their past 10 games. Pretty impressive in Nashville. Now, nobody's really been talking about the Predators all that much, but they're winning games when they have to. They beat the Rangers, they beat the Islanders, the Devils. They beat some pretty good teams, in that metro area. That's never a tough, especially the past 2 or 3 years. That has not been an easy road trip. The Nashville Predators took care of business. Really exciting to see that in Nashville. Some optimism there. And, we'll kind of see how things go. I think UC Saros has definitely given the Predators and will give them a chance throughout the rest of the year to maybe be a playoff team in the Central. But it's imperative that they continue to get that depth scoring and that scoring from up front, the top guys, if they want this chance. And now we're seeing Eeli Tolvanen getting some game-winning goals. We're seeing, that spark of offense that really hasn't been there for this Predators team for, kind of a long time. Okay, here we go. So at number 13, we're staying on the East Coast as we're looking at the Boston Bruins. And the Bruins are 5-3-2 in their past 10. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They're on their own West Coast road trip. Linus Ullmark the other night with that big fist pump at the end of the game. You see he's jacked. He's ready to go. Good stuff there from the Bruins netminder. There's been some questions recently about the status of, Patrice Bergeron. Will he go... will he stay there? There's been some outside distractions. As long as the Bruins keep that stuff out of their locker room, I don't think they will be too affected by it. The bottom 6 production has been good, and they've been able to replace guys like Nola Chari with other guys like Noshik that have come in, and they haven't been super great. Nobody's really talking about them, but they're getting it done, and that's really, if you're a Bruins fan, that's all you could ask for. Again, another team like the Blues, I want to move them up further. I just want to see a little bit more consistency. I think the Bruins could find themselves in the top 10 by the beginning of 2022. Okay, at number 12, we're heading to Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Penguins, with Sidney Crosby in the lineup, you could see how things have turned on a dime in the Steel City. The Penguins right now have won 7 of their past 10 games. They've picked up points in 8 of their last 10 games. They're on a 4-game winning streak. And there's this sense in Pittsburgh that they're able to win the close games now. Like I just mentioned with Anaheim, they beat the Anaheim Ducks 1-0. Casey DeSmith, Tristan Jarry. Doesn't seem to matter who's in between the pipes. They're playing well, which is really exciting in Pittsburgh. That this is a team that I was expecting to decline this year. I was expecting them to fall off a little bit. And they've hung in there. And they hung in there with a lot of injuries earlier this year. They got those beautiful new jerseys. I love them. And now all of a sudden you're saying, Pittsburgh, man, there is definitely something to look forward to. And I think there is some optimism in Pittsburgh that maybe, just maybe, they have another crack at it this year. And they're giving some confidence to their management there, and Hextall and Burke. And maybe they could be buyers at the deadline. In a very tough Metro division, they might be able to get themselves in there. So again, it's still early in the year. But what I've seen from the goaltending, pretty impressive turnaround. And I had a lot of questions about that. Really, they have done quite well. Got to give props where it's due. Okay, so at 11, this is a much darker tone in Edmonton. What is going on in Alberta? We're going to have to talk about both these teams, but the Edmonton Oilers here at number 11, guys, this was a top 3 team consistently through our power rankings through this season so far. And just like that, they have now found themselves not only outside the top 5, outside of the top 10. They're currently number 11. They're 4-6 in their past 10 games. They're on a 5-game losing streak. They kept it close the other night at home, but they lose either way. That's the kind of stuff that burns. It burns to see that. There are a couple goals there where McDavid's coming in. Draisaitl couldn't finish. They're playing together again. It is just, man, it just never ends in Edmonton. And again, Edmonton's one of those cities, when it rains, it pours. And right now, when, it's raining gold and you're on, at the top of your division, at the top of the NHL standings, it feels great. It's the best feeling in the world. Except when you go on a 5-game losing streak, it's the end of the world in Edmonton. And I think they have to weather this storm, especially some of the newer guys that are in the organization. It is critical for them. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, they need another goaltender in there. Mikko Koskinen has played okay. I think Dallas, they're probably going to call Dallas or Chicago for goaltending. But if you want the team to get you a goaltender, if you want, your manager, Ken Holland, to have enough trust in you and confidence that he could go out and get a rental goalie, you got to be able to play for him. And I think it's really important for the Oilers that they avoid a longer losing streak than what they have right now. If we're sitting here next week on an 8-9 game losing streak for the Oilers, it might get a little bit yucky there in Edmonton. Speaking of not a great situation in Alberta, like I'm saying, what's going on? We're seeing a total change here this week. Vancouver's playing well, Seattle's playing okay, and yet Calgary and Edmonton have just fallen off. Calgary 5-4-1 in their past 10. They're on a 4-game losing streak. Just what is going on with those two teams right now? It's hard to watch. It just doesn't really seem to make all that much sense, honestly. But again, you got to look at the positive. And the positive right now is you're there. You're there. You're still in the top 10 despite not playing your best. And yeah, Jacob Markstrom can't play every single night. It's going to be important for them that they find a way to just kind of get through it. And like I said, when it rains, it pours in Alberta. And that is also the situation in Calgary. Okay, so at number 9, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. We're staying in the Pacific Division. Now, mind you, we're in the Pacific Division. The past 3 teams, and that's it. At number 9 is Vegas, and that's it. That's where the cutoff is. We don't see another Pacific Division team throughout our top 10 here, and that's it. Vegas is 6-4 in their past 10. They seem to be riding a little momentum from that game against Dallas earlier this week. They kind of stole the game on Wednesday night. Really impressive there from the Golden Knights. But there is definitely some questions around, what's going on with Leonard and the goaltending. It hasn't been subpar, but it hasn't been, really even above average. And that is where there is slight concern there. I think there is some, tactical things that they could clean up. But again, technically they're at the top of the Pacific Division in our power rankings. So I guess you could look at it in that sense, they're doing good. But this is where you'd like to see Vegas kind of, put their foot on somebody's neck and kind of throttle this division and dominate. And that way you kind of create some separation. But again, that's all part of the process. Also, I'm wearing the Vegas shirt today because why not, right? All right, so at number 8, another team that's doing quite well right now is the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche have kind of, for 2 weeks now, been pretty consistently good. It also helps when they're on a 3-game winning streak. They're 7-2-1 in their past 10 games. They picked up 7 goals in their past 2 games, mind you. The Avalanche, man, they are fun to watch. And Nathan MacKinnon got rocked against the Rangers the other night. Landeskog is out with injury right now. That's slightly concerning. Jonas Johansson placed on waivers. There's a bunch of weird things going on in Colorado. Okay, but again, as long as you end up being a playoff team, I don't think anybody's going to care in Colorado, especially when the expectations were so high for them this season. And you look at their goals per game, they actually lead the NHL. They are first in the NHL for goals per game. So they must be doing something right. Okay, so at number 7, heading back to the East Coast, is the Washington Capitals. The Caps are 6-3-1 over their last 10. They've been playing some good hockey as well. They're actually pretty good defensively. Goals against per game right now, 5th best in the NHL. Goals per game, also 5th best in the NHL. So they're consistently keeping the puck out of the net, and they're also consistently putting the puck in the net where they have to. And that's why Washington has been very consistently in the top 10 this year, is because they haven't been flashy, getting these 8-9 game winning streaks, yet they just pound out week after week records like this, 6-3-1, it doesn't look sexy. It's not that 8-1-1 record or that 10-0 record. I mean, that's pretty hard to see, right? We don't have any of those right now, but you get what I'm saying. They're just grinding it out. And all these young guys that have come in, you're seeing Martin Fairvey, Shane Gersich a little bit, Connor McMichael, even the goaltending. Vitek Vanacek had to come in big the other night against the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you need for the Capitals. That depth has to be good enough because, yes, you expect your good guys to be good every night like Ovechkin, but you need that depth if you really want to be a great elite team. And I think the Capitals are knocking at the door and have been on the brink of that now for a little while. At number 6 in our power rankings, just slightly moving outside of their normal spot in the top 2, top 3, is the Carolina Hurricanes. This is the first time in a while we've seen the Hurricanes out of the top 5. But they are currently 5-4-1, so they don't have that super great sexy record. Yet they also have a 4-game winning streak, so what can you really complain about? Now, they kind of disposed of the Oilers the other night, so they're doing well on the West Coast right now. So, they're able to win at home, they're able to win on the road. That's definitely something to hang your hat on. And they're scoring goals very prolifically, very good defensively as well. I mean, their defensive stats have been really good. Penalty kill, second best penalty kill in the NHL, and they also have the best goals against per game. That is a Rod Brind'Amour hockey team right there. You know who's running things there. He's done a great job. All that turnover there in Carolina. You bring in Ethan Bear, Tony DeAngelo. Who's that other Rangers defenseman that is not any good? Forgot his name. Is it Jack Johnson? They brought in Jack Johnson and the other guy. And they're doing well. They took a lot of heat and a lot of criticism for some of the moves they've made. Yet, here they are, a top 6 team in the league consistently and really good in their defensive stats this year. So, kudos there to the Hurricanes. Speaking of kudos, yet slightly, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, number 5, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Tampa Bay Lightning, 7-2-1 in their past 10 games. They were on a 5-game winning streak that was snapped last night against none other than the Ottawa Senators. What's going on there? They almost swept their Northeast road trip, and it was destroyed thanks to the hands of the Ottawa Senators. Who would have thought? But Tampa Bay has not been super impressive. I mean, you look at their stats, they are dominant in goals against, goals per game, penalty kill, power play. They aren't really super great in any of those categories yet this year. Yet they're finding other ways to get these wins. And Brian Elliott has not been a world beater. That's partially the reason they lost to the Senators, because Vasilevsky can't play every night. But Tampa's finding ways to just win games, again, consistently. You don't have to go on a 10-game winning streak every season. You can't go, let's be realistic. You can't go on 10-game winning streaks and rely on that consistently through the season. This isn't GM mode. This is real life. I think Tampa's done a very nice job. John Cooper, honestly, I would give him credit to be one of the Jack Adams finalists. And the reason I say that, obviously they expect to be here, but you look at the turnover they had. This is not the same team they've had for really the past 2 or 3 years now. And the fact that John Cooper, including myself, has taken a lot of heat. How good would he be as a coach had the team not been so good? They're still, again, they have very good pieces, but they aren't even the super team they've been the past 2 years. And he's been able to bring in some of these young guys and produce pretty good players in that bottom 6, getting some confidence in some of those guys. And we're seeing that kind of follow through as this Tampa team has gotten better defensively, scoring more goals, and a little better play from Vasi. And just like that, Tampa is back in the top 5 for our power rankings for the first time since our preseason power rankings. That's how long it's been for Tampa. Yep, it's been a long road, but Tampa is back. Now they're going to go on a 5-game losing streak now that I jinxed them. Okay, so at number 4, we're heading to the Mecca of hockey. No, it's not Montreal. We're heading to Toronto. The Toronto Maple Leafs just dropping outside of our top 2 where they were last week. They were number 1 last week. They jumped down to 4. They're playing really well, but other teams around them have just been so dominantly good. They kind of had a close one the other night against the Blackhawks. They were up 4-1 in that game. They let the lead slip. They tied the game. And yet a lucky bounce for David Kampf, a former Blackhawk. I think that's his second goal this season against the Blackhawks. He's been kind of a Hawks killer since he left. They're 7-2-1, and the guys are scoring. You're seeing the guys like John Tavares, William Nylander getting on the board. And that's really what the Leafs rely on. I mean, let's be honest. Their offense relies a lot on those top-end guys. And they're getting some good puck bounces like they did in the final minute of that game the other night. So it hasn't been perfect for Tampa. Obviously, it's not perfect for most teams. Yet they're finding ways to stay in those games. And that's definitely something as, a Leafs fan, you could be pretty happy about. And again, when everything's under the microscope, it's definitely difficult. But they've managed it pretty well this season. And, for maybe those first 2 weeks, they weren't very good. But since then, they've really, they went on that nice winning streak, and they haven't really looked back since then. And also, Peter Mrazek is back. That is a little bit dangerous as well. So now they have 2 really good goaltenders. That's definitely helped. Okay, so here we are. Our top 3 power rankings for Week 8. Here we go. So at number 3, we have the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers, probably not much of a shock to most of you. Yeah, the Florida Panthers they've been in this conversation for a while. And the reason for that is we know what we're getting. We know what we're getting from the Panthers. They're a team that can consistently just get things done. And they've had little blips here and there, 2 or 3 game losing streaks. Yeah, that's going to happen. But yet they bounce back. And when you have, there could be a lot of awards in Tampa Bay, or not even Tampa Bay, Tampa too, but there could be a lot of awards going to the Florida Panthers this year with the way they're playing. They have 2 potential Norris Trophy candidates in Mackenzie Weegar and Aaron Ekblad. They might have a Vezina finalist in their goaltending. They might have a Barkov getting maybe the Hart Trophy. Or what's the other one? The Center Trophy. I always forget what that one is. They're going to be in the conversation for winning the division. Dare I say the President's Trophy, which is kind of cursed. They could win that one too. But I like what the Panthers have done. And despite losing your head coach, they have kind of trucked through all of that. And they kind of put it on the back burner. And again, what solves all the off-ice issues? Winning hockey games. And that's all you could ask from the Florida Panthers. That's all they've done. And Vinny Viola, kudos to him, the owner. He's gotten this team to buy in. And here are the Panthers. And they haven't really looked back. And man, despite a couple of losses here and there, you could tell that this team is going to be good. And, really they're saying Edmonton and Carolina are the 2 teams that see themselves as full-on buyers. I'm surprised the Florida Panthers haven't been in that conversation as well. I think this is a team that is going to potentially be very special this year. A lot of people had them as Cup favorites going into the year. Definitely keep an eye there in Florida. Okay, so here we are at number 2, building a little suspense. And they're in the same spot they were last week. And they aren't at number 1, but number 2 is pretty good too, right? It's the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers, despite losing Igor Shesterkin this week, I expected them to slip up this week. I'm going to be honest. Yet they found a way to win. And they lost that game against the Avalanche. The Avalanche have been very hot, though, recently. So take with that what you will. But they beat the Buffalo Sabres, a game they maybe could have lost that game. Again, you had some things go your way. But Georgiev kept them in that game. He's been good enough. They've had a couple of goaltenders come up. I think that, who was that? Huska came up. I forgot the other guy, Keith Kincaid, the Long Island native. So the Rangers have kind of been bouncing around with their goaltending recently, yet they're still winning games. And I think the Rangers, you could tell, you watch this team play, the fight from the team, the way they're playing, they look different. And you have to hang your cap to Gerard Gallant, the way he's turned this team around. And the Rangers, don't look now, but they are one of the better teams in the NHL. And it's really not even close. They've done some really nice things. And definitely something to hang your hat on through the first part of this season. Something we haven't seen from the Rangers really since the season before Henrik Lundqvist retired. What was that, 2018, 2017? It's been some time for the Rangers. I think they are. It's definitely been long enough. I think they're pretty excited to see what's gone on at the Big Apple. All right, so that means at number 1, this team kind of came out of nowhere. And the reason for that is, I mean, they had their 8-game winning streak broken last night in LA, but the Minnesota Wild. We have to talk about the Minnesota Wild here at number 1. The state of hockey has your number 1 team in our Week 8 Power Rankings. This is the first time ever in my Power Rankings that the Minnesota Wild have been number 1. Pretty interesting, right? But the Minnesota Wild, and this season as well, the Minnesota Wild 8-1-1 in their past 10, which means at this rate they picked up 17 of a possible 20 points over the past couple of weeks. Really impressive. They just came off that 8-game winning streak. This is a real legit Minnesota team. And despite being on the West Coast and finally suffering that loss, how are they going to bounce back the rest of this road trip? That is the key for the Minnesota Wild before they come back to Minneapolis. I really like what the Wild have done. This team has asserted themselves as probably another team for Bill Guerin to say, listen, if there's some potential guys that you could pick up, if they could pick up a Tomas Hertl, if they could pick up a Brock Besser or a JT Miller or somebody of that ilk, they could definitely afford to do that because this team looks legit. And they see a window right now where they could win a Stanley Cup. They have a great goaltender in Cam Talbot, a great goaltender in Kaapo Kähkönen. And you're seeing the other guys, you're seeing the great connection between Kaprizov and Zuccarello. That defense is doing a great job. The bottom 6 is tough to play against. Probably the, kind of very similar to the Islanders' infamous 4th line. They've embraced that identity in the bottom 6 in Minnesota as well. It's paying off, and they look really good right now. They're getting depth scoring, great defensive strategies. This is a great Minnesota Wild team, and they've been good for a while now. One of the must-watch teams in the NHL right now. If you're, let's say, you're a Hurricanes fan and your team's not playing, you have to watch the Wild. I think the Wild and the Ducks in particular are the 2 most exciting teams in the NHL to watch right now. So if you have some extra time during the week to watch any of those teams, make sure you do that. And it's definitely frustrating for the team that has to play these 2, especially the Minnesota Wild recently. But man, if the Minnesota Wild can come off this 8-game winning streak and still play 6-3-1 hockey, 7-1-1 or 7-2-1 hockey, we're going to still be talking about the Wild throughout the season as a prolific team that should definitely gain some respect as a potential playoff team. Potentially a Stanley Cup contender. That is it for our Week 8 NHL Power Rankings, guys. We are over 2 months into the NHL season, halfway through December. Real quick recap of our top 3. My top 3 this week: Florida, the Rangers, and the Minnesota Wild. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, make sure to check out our Instagram. We have the daily schedule for that night's action. Some pretty good stuff on our story, so make sure to check that out. All the links for that are going to be here throughout the end of the video, as well as in the links in the description down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again later.